I was working with a radio station, a classical music radio station in Seattle called King FM, and doing lots of interviews, stories about great artists in my years in Seattle. The woman who handled those interviews was a woman named Maxine Frost, and she said, "Why don't we do a book?" And I said, "Sure, let's do a book," thinking that would never happen. She went to Amadeus Press with some of the interviews, and they thought it was a great idea, and there it was. So in a way, I was caught a little bit off guard because I thought I was too young to do a memoir. But now that I'm 70, maybe I'm not. It's not too young. And when they got the material, they said, "Great, we love it, but Jerry, we want you to write it." So I wrote the book. It was kind of, it's on one of those rare moments when you don't do something purposefully, but when the opportunity came, and John Cirillo from Amadeus Press said, "You should do it," I said, "Fine." And so there it is, and it's very exciting for me to look back on my life, and of course look forward to what's coming next. Yes, I prefer working with musical notes. Those are the kind of notes that I've been working with and loving and adoring all my life. I've never thought of myself as a writer, and yet I have had opportunities. I've had articles written, published in the New York Times, the LA Times, and the New Criterion. And it's always been fun for me to write. And this actually was an enjoyable experience. And because of the internet, all of the history that with dates that I could check in the newspapers, be it the New York Times or the Seattle Times. And it was very exciting to look back on what I've done and the accomplishments I've had. I think the thing that my parents did primarily, of course, raised me well, gave me a tremendously high-powered work ethic. They were both doctors, worked extremely hard, many, many hours. They were highly respected in the community. They demanded from my sisters and myself to do well in school, to study music, to go to the ballet, go to the opera, go to the theater. It was a very lucky upbringing for us. And in a way, it's the way my parents were brought up. They were brought up in Vienna, and they went to the opera every week, and they were in standing room, and they went to the theater. So they brought us up the same way they were brought up. And I guess their striving for excellence in their own life has guided me to strive for that in mine. Well, I basically became a New Yorker when I went to high school at Performing Arts. Um, Everything I did first in New York. It's unusual. Most people, they do things in their hometown of Enid, Oklahoma, or Oshkosh or someplace. And then you grow and you grow, and then at some point you're lucky enough as an artist to come to one of the great cities like New York. For me, everything I did was in New York. I studied in New York. I played in New York. My first conducting was in New York. My first concerto appearances were in New York. My solo recordings were made. I mean, I really am a New Yorker in the quintessential way. At one point in my life, I ended up moving to Seattle. Now, that was very interesting because I had a vision of the United States very much like the New Yorker did, which had New York being everything, and then everything else is kind of hidden on the other side of the Hudson. And I learned to appreciate a different side of the country in a smaller city, a remarkable city, and watch it grow during my years there. Well, of course, if you have a kind of upbringing like I've had, music is part of your life. It's part of your daily life. So I started playing piano when I was 5. So the idea of living without music never existed for me, or for that matter, for my sisters, or for that matter, for our children. For other people who don't have those great opportunities, hopefully they can learn music and care about it from school. And if they don't, what often happens is that they embrace music as they get older and they have time. Because lots of people, when they're working very hard, raising a family or worrying about having a significant other, uh, you don't have time for something as glorious as going to a concert unless you're dedicated to it. So many people, as they approach their retirement age of 65, 70, start seeing this great world that's open to them. And then they make time. It would be great if educationally we would be teaching everyone music. We know that they would all do better in school. We know that it would be a tremendously positive influence on every child. But without that opportunity, hopefully they will make time for it when they have time, after they have built their families and made the money necessary to survive those years.